Peter Wood, civil engineer at Dartington Hall, then royal engineer in Norway and the Western Desert, became Major Wood of SOE in Yugoslavia. There, he had an idea of running a working community, which was finally realized when he became tenant of Herm.
To me, Herm Island is just exactly the size an island ought to be. The island itself is 1.5 miles from south to north, and it's half a mile from the west to the east. It's about 500 acres. You can look around you in certain places on the island, and you are conscious of the fact that the sea is all around, that there are other islands, the French coast clearly to be seen. It's got hills and valleys, woods. It just is the perfect size for an island. It's 3 miles from St. Peter Port, Guernsey, 3 miles eastwards. It's halfway between Sark and Guernsey. The northern, say, third is grass-covered sand dunes with sandy beaches all the way round. And then the southern 2/3 of the island has got high cliffs, valleys that run down from the central spine of the island down to the sea. In 1949, Jenny and I heard that this island, the lease of this island was for sale, and it took us just one day to decide that this was precisely the sort of place where we would like to build up a small community of people where we'd all do our different jobs, but we would all be working together for the same kind of thing. So the place was very dilapidated in those days. We've put in electric light, of course, since then, and water and proper drainage. We've rebuilt the buildings, and we've got 10 or 11 families here now, all of them doing necessary jobs to the running of the island. There are the Pelauges. Mary works in the beach cafes in the summer. John Pelauge works in the garden. He's the only Guernseyman we have here now. There's Brian Pickard. Brian is our accountant, and Judith, his wife, and their 4 children, and there's Dick and Joan Capron. Dick works in the office, in the accounts office with Brian. Joan, of course, is a school teacher. There's Derek Elsey. He's responsible for the powerhouse and all electrical installations on the island, as he and his wife. The only person who lives here who's not in a family is Jill Kendrick. She works in the office as my secretary. She gets a lot out of the island. She's very knowledgeable about birds and the beaches and shells and so on, and she really does savor every part of it. When I first came here, I had an extraordinarily deep sense of adventure. You really felt that one was living by one's own efforts. But bit by bit, we got it straightened out, the different families here, and myself and my wife.
When we first arrived, we had 2 children, one Simon, aged 2.5, and Joe, who was about 8 months. And then we had 4 children who were actually born on the island. Penny was the first, and she was the first baby, so the records told us, to be born on the island for about 100 years. And our arrangements with the doctor was that we should phone him up the moment he was needed. But it was a little unreliable because we hadn't had it in very long, and so our second line of defence was a bonfire, and we were to light this on the highest point of the island as a signal that we needed the doctor. We hoped we wouldn't have to use this, but anyway, this was laid on as a line of defence, and we weren't all that confident in our telephone, our radio telephone. However, of all things, Penny chose to arrive on the night of November the 5th, bonfire night. However, radio telephone worked perfectly, and then, of course, the baby had to be delivered by the light of oil lamps, which is, well, a bit hot and uncomfortable, to put it mildly.
One of the first things was communications in all its aspects. We had to be able to get to and from Guernsey. We had to be able to ship things. And so we bought, in the first winter that we were here, 2 boats. And we charter a 65-foot decked MFV trawler at least once a week for the 6 months of the summer. And that brings over a decked cargo each time of about 9 or 10 tons. There is a difference between what we've done on Herm and many other island stories. Many of these groups of people that go to islands pool the result of all their work, and they take out of it just what they want. I don't think these kind of schemes often work, because I think that people are competitive by nature, and if a man is doing more, or thinks he's doing more than the other chap, he wants to take more out of it. The basis of the Herm community is that people are here, I think, firstly because they like the island life, but they're also paid the commercial rate for their job.
I'd always felt a deep need to be involved in the end product of the things that I was accounting for. There's certainly no difficulty about this on Herm. I'm dealing with everything that a civil servant would have to deal with in the administration of a state or a country, if you like. You're paying the wages of your neighbours, for example. You couldn't be closer between the accounting for the subject and the subject matter itself. I'm delighted with the job aspects.
There are very few jobs on the island for wives. At the moment my youngest child is 2, I couldn't possibly have a job. And this is part of the reason why I'm content to be on Herm for the time being. Supposing I were working in the office, I can't imagine myself ever being in a position to make decisions or even to have an opinion in the making of a decision. I can't think that any wife would be involved to that extent. I'm as far involved as I would wish to be at the moment.
The families on Herm depend on tourism for their living. About 100,000 people each season, roughly half the visitors to Guernsey, take a day trip to Herm. An Italianate village with a pub and restaurant and 2 souvenir shops caters for them. Campers and hotel guests contribute to the industry that earns 95% of the island's income between April and October. For 365 days of the year, the other 5% come steadily in.
Sometimes I'm asked just precisely what we did pay for the lease of the island. We did, in fact, pay £15,000. We didn't have to look after the farm in our lease with the government of Guernsey, but to me it was something which was tremendously important. When we bought the place, there were a few cows. We are currently milking 60 cows, and we have 80 or 90 per head of cattle altogether. And of course they are all Guernseys. There can't be any other breed but Guernsey cattle. That's the law of the land. Currently we are sending about 120 to 140 gallons of milk a day to Guernsey. We do our buying in Guernsey and it comes across in the boat. The community is not big enough to support a little village shop. The essential thing about women living here is that they have to be happy knowing that their husbands are happy in their work and be interested and completely satisfied with her own home and her own children. In my own experience, as far as Jenny is concerned, that it is not in any way a limiting thing. I personally feel that it is the man's job to go out and earn the living, and it is the woman's place to provide the central core of the family.
together and eyes closed. And Samantha. I think Herm is what you make it. A lot of people seem to think that I was all set for a very cushy job, you know, with just 7 children. In actual fact, I'm working a lot harder than I was working before. Here with the wide age range, each child has to be thought of as a class of its own. Education-wise, my own children have developed terrifically. I think this is due to the fact that they can have so much individual attention. Go through the width and then the length of the playground, checking it on the trundle wheel, will you? You take the card, Nancy, and help Crystal with the counting. There were neither of them anywhere near the top of their class before, and therefore I think they both gave up rather. Now they're working on their own, they're not competing with other children. They've made tremendous strides, but there are disadvantages as well. In a small place like this, for boys, there are never enough to make up a real game of football. They haven't got the advantage of several teachers' experience. For example, I can't teach French, therefore they can't learn French. I mean, it's ideal for nature, but then they can't go out and do a project on motor cars. They can't price things in shops and handle money in this way. Later, as they were solemnly eating lunch in the high, dark dining room, Aunt Beatrice startled them by saying... The greatest problem, of course, when they get to 11 is that they have to then go to school in Guernsey. And this is why quite a few people, when their children come up to that age, feel that the children have had their best years here. I think that this is something that Herm is giving us. It's an opportunity, you know, to expand our own sort of family relations, and perhaps in this way it is Never Never Land, because it is something that I don't think could happen in many places. I think the sea all round makes a difference.
The things that I love most about Herm, I think, are the very nature of the island. I love the beaches, in particular this shell beach, which in fact is made up of millions of little broken bits of shells. I collect shells and I also make them up into little gifts for the shop. I love watching the birds, especially in the spring when they're nesting. In fact, every bit of the wild side of the island, this is what I love most. The actual island itself, I don't honestly think has changed in all the years I've been here. The changes have occurred around the hotel and the little village area by the harbour. Obviously more people come now, but the beaches, the common, the woods, the cliffs, the birds, the flowers, they're all just the same. I think once you've lived here, you have an affinity with the place, and you just know you're going to come back sometime or other. And I've been lucky each time I've come back there has been a job going, and I've just fitted back into the place again.
This is the end of our 13th year. We came here January 1959. John and I were both born in Guernsey. We never lived anywhere else but in Guernsey and in Herm. Because all the people that were here when we came are not here any longer. So we're now thinking of retiring, going to England, living nearer to our adopted daughter and her children, not only to have a bit more family life, but also to secure something for ourselves for the future. But you've got to get it into your mind before you actually settle on Herm that you cannot stay once you come to retirement age. No job on Herm carries a pension. The only pension you'd get is the small pension which you get from Guernsey, nothing compared with what they get in England anyway. Well, we're not happy to be leaving Herm by any means, but as I say, we've got to make a decision sooner or later, and we made the decision now.
The basic association which exists between the people who live on this island is basically a business one. I look for people, really, who are anxious to accept rather more responsibility than the ordinary run of people. If they are not capable of doing their job, or if there's just something about them which does not fit into the community, then we have to say, you must go. It is just the straight, inevitable result of a commercial arrangement when it turns out to be unsatisfactory. Let us pray. The God from whom all holy desires. I suppose I am the sort of person who feels a kind of responsibility for the community as a whole, and when all the island comes together, and I look around and I see healthy, happy people, well dressed, and I get a tremendous happy feeling because I think these people are my people. According to St. Luke, chapter 8. Now it came to pass. It is a fact that any community likes to feel that there is at the top of it a head. Imagine the time when Jenny and I go away, when we retire. I think that one would have to set it up in such a fashion that there was another person who had these same kind of feelings, being to all the people there the top man, the head of the island. There have been various monastic orders here, and they've built a lot of these enormous stone walls which cross the island, where some of these stones must weigh 4 or 5 tons each. They built the road down the center of the island. In the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, there was a lot of quarrying done on the island. There must have been something like 400 people living here then. They built a little prison. Prince Blücher von Vorstadt added quite a lot on to the old manor house and a round tower in the center of the island, which is now a water tower. I have to stand back to get satisfaction from what has happened in the last 22 years. I get a tremendous feeling of, well, this has been a good thing, this has been worth doing. And I don't think it's finished yet. It can be a better place for people to live in.